Welcome to Fundamentals. In this section, you will learn some basic fundamentals of body positioning before we dig into the poses. This will include standing properly, neutral spine versus rounded spine, and how to use your hands properly in yoga. This lecture will include hands-on demonstrations, so get ready to follow along. Hey everyone, and welcome to another lesson. Today we've got some fundamentals of yoga that we're going to teach you before we do any of the modifications. So even if you've practiced yoga before, this is some really important stuff that could really change the dynamics of your yoga practice. So I would highly recommend following along with these lectures. And we are going to start with standing. It sounds so basic and like I've been standing since I was little, but there's a little bit more to it than you may think. So a couple of key things with Ryan's standing pose here. Things that we're looking for are hip width distance. So having your feet the distance of your hips. So a lot of times women will look at how big their hips are and they'll step wider. It's actually where your hip bones are. So find your hip bones and then look directly down, and that's where your feet should be. So are your feet in line with your hip bones? Yeah, so something else we're going to look for is grounding down into our feet. So there's a concept in yoga that's talking about the four corners of the feet. So what we're looking for with this is thinking about engaging from your big toe to your pinky toe down to the corner of your heel, across to the other side of your heel, and back up to your big toe. So if you close your eyes and sort of shift your weight around on your feet, can you feel those four corners?
Yes, essentially.
Okay, so when we come to standing, we're always looking for this hip width distance stance, and then we're really going to engage through our feet. So keeping your head directly forward, engaging through your feet, and now drawing the line up through your leg and engaging through the top of your kneecaps. So engaging through your quadriceps. So that gives you that support and that strength in your pose. Now we're going to tuck the pelvis in and down and engage through the line in the belly, creating a nice long line up through your shoulders. So drawing your shoulder blades down and back, opening your chest a little bit, but not swaying the back. So you want to turn sideways so that everyone can see you here. So you can see that Ryan has a nice tuck of the pelvis. He's engaging through his core. He's relaxing through his shoulders. He's got a nice long line, but there's no sway in the back. So the back is nice and straight. And then that goes all the way up into his neck as well. So you want a nice long neck, drawing up through the crown of your neck, but not reaching your chin up towards the sky or anything. Yeah, that looks really good. So this is going to be the foundation of all of your standing poses. And if you're thinking, I know how to stand, just see if you can come back to this, because it'll kind of change the way that you interact with the muscles in your body with your standing poses in yoga. So the next thing we're going to talk about in fundamentals is having a sturdy base, and specifically knowing how to use your hands. So coming onto all fours, this is a common pose that you'll use in a lot of different yoga classes. And a couple things that we're looking for are wrists stacked directly over the shoulders. So this keeps as much weight off the wrists as possible. Oftentimes you'll hear people being like, oh, yoga really hurts my wrists, and they're putting a lot of extra weight onto their wrists that they don't need to. So by coming back and really creating this line, it allows the stronger muscles and the joint in your shoulder to take a little bit more of the weight. From here, you want to have your nice long line from the crown of your head all the way to your tailbone. So sometimes people will either look up. So do you want to look up? Yeah, and you create this sway through your cervical spine, or they'll look down, which creates strain on the cervical spine as well. So you want to think about a nice long line through your spine, gazing directly down in between your hands. And then in the same regard as the long line through your arms, we also want to find that in our legs. So from your hips all the way to your knees, creating this straight line. And then from here, you'll have a 90-degree going out towards your feet. And so something that's key with this is really spreading through all of your fingers. So fingers are super important in your yoga practice. Hands are really important. Lots of times people do downward facing dog like this as though they're wearing mittens, and it's really hard to support yourself without using your wrists. So allowing your fingers to spread, engaging through the pads of your fingers, and keeping the palm of your hand on the ground as well. So that'll allow you to feel nice and supported. So from here, you could tuck your toes and easily move into downward facing dog without having to adjust much. Maybe adjust your distance. Yeah, so a really, really smooth transition into downward facing dog. Okay, so one last fundamentals point while we're here in this pose is the concept of a neutral spine versus a rounded spine. So just as it sounds, neutral spine is going to be straight, rounded spine is going to be rounded. Yeah, so there's lots of different poses that you could see that. So yeah, this is sort of the cat-cow motion. Do you want to move through that again? So sinking and kind of arching your spine. It's more of a cow motion. You'll hear that pose in yoga classes. That's definitely not a neutral spine. And then reversing it, this is a rounded spine. And then can you come back to a neutral spine? So it's like we were talking about before, we were creating that long line from the crown of your head all the way through your spine to your tailbone. So there's 3 different parts of your spine. There's your cervical spine at the top, your thoracic spine, which is your mid spine, and your lumbar spine, which is your lower back. So a lot of women especially will dump into their lumbar spine. A lot of people will round through their thoracic spine. The way that we live is a very flexible lumbar spine or lower spine and a tight thoracic spine. And so what we want to keep in mind is keeping this nice neutral back through most of our poses. So if you move into a downward facing dog, right, so we want to keep this neutral spine once again, so creating this nice long line from tailbone to crown of head. So it goes all the way into even your gaze. So if Ryan were to straighten his legs a little bit, and then he might have to round through his spine. Yeah. And so this is what we don't want, is sort of this humpback motion in our thoracic spine. And there's a couple different poses that we're going to be going through, really looking for this. If you have tightness in the back sides of the legs, oftentimes you're going to compromise by rounding through your spine. So we're going to teach you in this course how not to do that.